principal that are going to be presented by Mr. Christopher and Mr. Robert.
Thank you.
It's got something about
That's very good. That's a very good voice. How? Do you want to do a bit of the presenting? What do you think we should do to parents?
Nothing. I mean, they're good in their own way, if I'm not mistaken.
They go their own way. Yeah.
That's a good answer.
That's a very good answer.
On that note, we'll finish.
Thanks for that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's very respectful. Welcome back. A lot of friends in the room. Nice to see you back. I'm actually going to take a back seat today and just intervene on Chris. So he'll be the busy one and I'll just be the personality in the corner.
Okay, so should I make a start? Right, so we're here to chat about engaging parents. So what we thought we'd do is our normal style, rather than having any kind of PowerPoint presentation. Or what's the new trendy one, Prezi? Do we all use Prezi? Yes. You're all cool. Okay. So we're not cool at all because we're not using anything. So I wrote down a few points, and my idea is that I will just chat through them and get ideas from you. And this session won't work if it's not interactive. So when I was chatting about it to Rob, I thought we could do that very formal thing of get into groups, or what do we call that thing? Think, pair, share. And then I thought, can I really look somebody in the eye who's over the age of 21 and say, would you do a bit of think, pair, share? So we're going to do it more informally. We're just going to chat. Any issues that come up, so often when you're talking about parents, you will have, because I know, don't worry, I know that you all have parents who are all fantastic all the time and never complain. And none of you have parents who, even though they're just one of them or two of them, take up 50% of your time. That never happens in your school. No. It only happens to me because I'm ineffective, so that I have these people. And anyway, so if you have any anecdotes, and I think what's useful in a session like this is often to talk about the reality of life. When I'm talking about any situation, it's very easy to talk about motherhood and apple pie. What do I mean by that? I mean by that coming out with general principles of how we should behave. We should all be good. We should all be nice. We should all have an open door policy. We should all listen to everything from everybody. But in practice, we can't do that. And the difficulty is often in the detail, it seems to me. So I'll be encouraging you, and Rob will be encouraging you today, to come up with anecdotes of your own. And this is a trusting group, and nothing will be reported outside. And it might be that we would have a chat about what would you do in a situation like that. Okay, I'm going to start us off with just 5 minutes or so chat from me, some of the ideas I've written down. The first one is when we're engaging with parents, at what level we engage with them. Is it at an individual level, a class level, a grade level, or a whole school level? So we think about that. And then when we see those people, in what context are we meeting with them? One of the things, I'm going to be honest here, and I'll tell you one of the criticisms of me that's just come up this week. Why don't I start by saying, mea culpa, I am guilty, I am not perfect. Somebody said, well, Mr. Chris, as they call me, Mr. Chris is not available enough, we don't see him around enough. And poor Mr. Chris is busily sprinting around the school trying to be everywhere and be everything to everybody. But I guess that would be a common criticism of some of you. Would that be right? I can see people nodding. So then we think about whether or not we have a strategy. Do you, for example, have a policy in your school that you will stand at the school gate at the beginning of every day, or you'll stand in the playground or something like that? Do you make an effort to make yourself available? So I think that's the first point I want to talk about, and that is the apparent availability of the principal. But there's a downside to that, because I was talking to people, friends of mine. I actually managed to acquire a friend outside of education. Are you jealous of?
I used to have one about 30 years.
Did you? Yeah, it was me. Anyway, I've ditched him since then. So, and I was chatting to this friend and I said, you know, one of the problems is, and you will have this, I can never get anything done because I thought, I read this book and it said, it's good to have an open door policy, and I guess in some ways it is. The downside of that, of course, is that you're so available, you never get anything to do. You look at your watch and it's 11 o'clock in the morning and you've been there for 3-4 hours and you haven't actually started anything yet. So this friend told me about a supermarket in England, which is where I come from, and the person turned the supermarket chain around by having a rule that if people wore hats or badges, I can't remember which one it was, they weren't allowed to be interrupted. And actually the company became much more successful because half the time the things that people are telling you probably they could sort out for themselves, or they just went, can I just tell you, last night, honestly, I met this woman and she was so lovely and I've got to tell you, and you know, blah, 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 and 15 minutes later, you know, you haven't achieved anything, you've listened to the story, but you haven't got anything done. So I'm not saying I'm against an open door policy. What I'm saying is there's a balance between being accessible, being seen to be accessible, having an open door policy on the one hand, and on the other hand saying I need to focus on my work. And how many people in this room get their best work done? If you're a sado like me, you get into work at about 6:15 in the morning. Get their best work done from 6:15 to 7:15, and then at the end of the day, maybe you've gone home or maybe you're still in school, you get your best work done when everybody's gone home at that time. And why is that? Because you're not interrupted. So I think when we're talking about parents, we're talking about time issues, we're talking about how much time we're willing to give to that 2% of parents. If we give them time, and a friend of mine once said, you can see I'm boasting about how many friends I've got. Paul?
I'm over it.
You're over it, it's over it now, okay. They used to call it feeding the dragon. And you would get people who, however much you try and pacify them, you know, I had a parent last week complaining to me about her daughter's progress in swimming. Right? Now I have a big school and I thought, do I know anything about your daughter's progress in swimming? Do I know who your daughter is? I know where the swimming pool is, but after that I'm struggling a little bit. And she, you know, and she talked, and how much time we're willing to devote to things like that, and how much we say, actually, I'm not willing to do that. I know, and I don't run this myself, but I know colleagues of mine will have sessions when they say, right, during these times, I'm available to meet with any parents who want to come and see me. They'll cope with that stress and pressure issue that way. Other colleague friends of mine will have, for example, on a Saturday morning, a session where once a month where it's called Meet the Principal, and people come in. They might come in at a grade level, or it might be organised in that way. But it's an opportunity for the parents to come and meet you, because the criticism of me that I was talking about just a few minutes ago was because people hadn't seen me in the part of the school that they inhabit as much as they wanted to see me. And what was their conclusion from that? Mr. Chris, he doesn't care. Okay? So I think my first issue's around that. The individual parent, the group of parents, the managing of time. I don't know if anybody's got any comments to make on any of that, any ideas to help us, people who are struggling a little bit like myself, maybe some other people, on how you manage those situations, how you get that balance right in terms of time.
We do the coffee mornings, the principal, just like we meet the principal coffee morning, and we've got clear set agendas for those coffee mornings.
Should I tell you what I'm doing now?
Yeah.
I'm taking notes because, and I'm not joking, because I'm going to learn from you. We're here all to learn from one another. So you would have a coffee. So at your coffee morning, would it be for a particular grade level, or is it an open house?
No, we have it per grade level. Like we started off doing as a whole school, but it got really messy because people had different agendas. So we now do a very clear, like it's grade 4 coffee morning, and we are addressing teaching and learning or assessments. So we have agendas attached to the coffee morning. We do 2 in a month, So, that's the way the principal has to be there.
The-
I'm the Dean of Studies, so I would actually do coffee mornings quite often with parents, but the principal does once a month. And it's purely based on an agenda that has been a burning issue in the school. So
Okay, so you've limited it to a grade level. You've limited it to an agenda. Okay, so then you've got to think about the style of it. Okay, is it going to be you or me or Rob or whoever's doing it, wander around from table to table and have a chat? Or are we going to stand up and make a presentation? How would you do yours?
So what we do is that we have all the senior leadership team there. So it will be the deputy principal, the principal, and the dean of studies. We have these layers, so we have all of us are there in front. So we first do a brainstorming session of what, we give the parents about 40 minutes to bring it on the paper, what the real areas of problems or issues are. And thereafter we have spokesperson from those, so these are the kind of things that we are facing in grade 4, how do you address it, and what do you have an answer for that. So that's the way we're doing it. It's been really effective, I must say.
What a brilliant idea. Okay, so I suggested you could do one way, which is a person stand up and present. Not a bad idea. Or you could have somebody wandering around. But the best idea is your idea. Because what you do is you gather all the questions, then you're able to chunk them together, and then you're able to, first of all, you're able to deal with them one at a time, each issue, because several people will have the same issue. And secondly, it gives you thinking time. The worst thing is you're standing there like this, right? A bit nervous. I don't know if we ever get nervous, but a bit nervous. You're there like that. And some parent at the back who's a complete pain. I know you don't have any in your school. I don't have any in mine. But we'll imagine this person. Okay? What about my son? Last week he was travelling on the bus. Some boy got his finger and nearly poked his eye out. You allow bullying in your school, you're a horrible man. Gosh. So you're trying to deal with situations like that on the hoof. It's very difficult. It's impossible because, of course, if nothing else, you don't know the detail of the situation. So you could say, sorry, sir, I apologise. I'll make a note of it and we'll get back to you. You could do it that way. Or you could do what is being proposed over here and just put that as a general issue. Then when you've dealt with the general issues, I guess after that, if the parent still wasn't happy, which would be fair enough, you would then refer the parent to the homeroom, to the classroom teacher. Okay. Anything else on how you would deal? We've got an idea over here. Any more ideas how we deal with parents that way? Rob?
I've got a really interesting one. Chris mentioned the 80-20 principle. That 20% of parents take up all the time, and 80% are quite happy with the school. I actually give parents in Dubai a lot more credit than that. I actually think the parents here are fantastic. And I work on a 98-2 principle.
Yeah.
So 98% of them are with us. They are the children's first teacher. They're interested. They give their kids quality time. They give us an awful lot of support. And it's only 2% that we're dealing with. And the message to 2% is always listen with both ears. Give them time. So getting out of the confrontational element of, please see me as soon as we're finished, I'll be happy to talk this through with you. That polite interaction which shows them respect will ease the situation and calm it down. The other thing is extending what you talked about a bit beyond the gate. Being available is important because what is a small issue at the beginning of May might be a very difficult issue by the 18th of May. So that ability that the parent has to have a quick word with you and say, just keep an eye on class 7A, there's something going on there you need to keep an eye on, which my parents now trust me with, and they know I'll go away and be interactive. And then a quick follow-up call to say, thanks very much, there's an issue boiling there, I really appreciate your support. Goes a long way with parents about building that culture of trust and building that culture of engagement. After all, it's their school. It's their child. And they're the ones who are going to be with the children all the way through. We might come and go. They might experience 4 or 5 principals. They might experience 10. But the constant in that child's life will be the parent. And it's about them as much as it is about the child. So always listen with both ears. Always mirror the conversation. So don't go in with predetermined ideas about their right. I know I'm always right, but I never tell them. But that listening and mirroring of the conversation is really vital to a successful outcome. And even the most aggressive parents just need listening to. And you go through your key rules. Never say yes during those conversations. I'll look into it, it's fine. I'll get back to you, it's fine. I'll find out more information, it's fine. But avoid the word yes. Because yes is finite, it's determined, it's got you. So it's a very smart way, an intuitive way of working through a conversation. But listen to them you must. Because if they don't, what's going to happen? It's like a little cancer. It starts, and then they go and tell somebody else. And then 2 people are telling 4, and 4 are telling 8, and 8 are 16. And eventually there's this massive opinion that Mr. Rob doesn't listen. And it's not the truth. And it does take time, but it is valuable time. And the other thing I try to do is, if somebody has a complaint, call them straight away, let them know I've listened. Even if I can't see them for 2 days, I've made the contact, they've heard my voice, and inside the voice they hear the concern and care. They're valuable people. They actually pay my wages. They actually pay my teachers' wages, and we never ever forget that. We're in a private education system. Our parents are the soul of our school, as well as being the financial heart of the school, if you want me to talk about it in such terms. But I'll go back to the key point about our parents in Dubai. They're risk takers, they're out here through choice, they want to make a difference in their child's lives. Most see their children growing up in a global society, and they're moving away from parochial choices. I did it for my kids. The rationale for bringing them out here was I didn't want them to think about one county in England. I wanted them to perceive that they're world citizens and the world is theirs, not just a little state. So look at the courage and bravery of our parents to come to Dubai, to take a chance, to bring the children, bring them up in an environment they don't know. So they deserve respect for that. If you offer respect as a rule of thumb in life, you get respect. And that's what will drive us and energize us as principals of school. Yes, it takes time. Yeah. And open door policy, I go on the gate at 7:30, 8 o'clock till 8:30 is their time. If anyone wants to stop and have a quick chat, either on the gate, or if it's a more detailed chat, they know. And it's the same for all of the heads of school. I have the same time is available, and at the end of the day. So if there's something happens during the day, when's the best time to discuss it? Right there and then. Don't let it dwell on somebody's mind for 12 hours or so. So that rapid response, if you wish, that listening ear, is something that will save you hours and hours and hours of time later on. But also all the time, it builds up that really, really important culture, one of respect and mutual interest. We all want the kids to do well. No matter how the argument is going, that's always there in the back of people's minds. It may mean different things to different people at different times, but over time, they're on the same page. And always keep that. So listen to both of these, speak with one mouth. I think it's an Arabic saying, isn't it? It's certainly not smart enough to come from my neck of the woods. We talk too much.
So following on from that, as Rob said, and Rob I'm sure has, and I know I've run leadership courses for principals, and one of the things that I think I hear not enough is that one of the best qualities of a leader is to be a good listener. And I very rarely hear that. I hear vision, we know that, and strategy, we know that, and all those things are important. But what about listening? 2 ears, one mouth, listen as much as you talk. And there's a dreadful television program in England. I watched one series, dreadful, called Big Brother. Do you know that? Oh, do you know that program? They stick people in a room like this, and they have gentlemen like the gentleman over there, the Irish gentleman on the camera. And they're all there filming away, and we all sit in a room like this. And they watch how we get on. And then the public watches this program and votes people out. Get him out! He's horrible. Get him out! We don't want him anymore. The person who's always left, of course, is the most popular person who's always the best listener, because they're the most popular people. And to pick up on what Rob said, I was talking about an example I got yesterday, this email from this parent. Okay. Last night she got 3 emails from me. Okay, I invited her into my office. She's welcome to come and see me. I'll give you another example just from this morning. I was walking around my school. This gentleman came up to me, rather big gentleman, so I was very polite. Very big gentleman, okay, from Russia. And he said, oh, there's a problem, exactly. And he said, there's a problem. The heating in my child's classroom is never right. Now, that's a tiny thing. Tiny, tiny thing. Should I be concerned with that? Not really. But he's asked me the question. So I can either say nothing to do with me, I'm not going to do that, or I can say I'll put it on my list of jobs. Not going to do that because I can't do that either. So I say, fine, come with me. We go and we find the person who's responsible for that we sort it out. Another lady came to see this morning, parent knocked on the door, came in. Her friend has a child with a particular special need, wondering if the child could get a place in our school. I said, fine, come with me. She came with me. We walked and found the head of special needs, who's fantastic, and we just had a chat there and then. But the issue is, you know, one can't always be 100% available all of the time. And I think what's interesting about Rob's comment is that he has particular times of the day when he is available. And if you take my examples from this morning, it's probably a similar time, you know, at the beginning of the day. It's usually the best time. So for me, as I'm beginning to unravel the learning I'm doing from this session, because don't forget I'm learning as well. Over here, we've got it organized because you've got sessions. Over here, we've got it organized as well because you've got particular times of the day. So it makes that being responsive manageable, because you can't just have it all day, every day, or you'd never get anything done. Any more on that particular subject of managing, as Rob said, the 2%? And in my experience, it's about 2% as well. It's certainly nothing like 20%, and I would even say 1%, less than 1%. That's a very, very small number of people. Do you think you were ever in a position, would you ever say to a parent, look here, they do, and this is the 20th time they're going to see you in 20 days, look here, if you don't like it, get out. Would you ever say that? Would you ever say that politely?
Yes.
Yes.
Come on, yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to.
Sometimes you have to. I had one parent, they said, right, not happy with you. I said, your child has to learn Arabic. No, the child shouldn't learn Arabic. No, well, I consulted with all the people who knew this child. Yes, you should learn Arabic. Now, to me, I have a moral, there's the precedent issue, which we know about. If I say yes to you, then I might have to say yes to another 20 people. I understand that issue. But beyond the precedent issue, we have a moral issue. And that is, this country, quite rightly in my view, insists that all the students learn Arabic. I chose to come and live here. That was my choice. Therefore, I should support the KHDA, I should support Dubai in the teaching of Arabic. Oh, my child doesn't want to learn it. Now, the reason, in my opinion, was spurious, was not correct. Okay? Right, Mr. Chris, I'm going to take you to the KHDA. Go to the KHDA. And they went to the KHDA, and they had an interview with the people at the KHDA, and the KHDA supported me. And what the parents did in the end was they moved their child to another school. But that was fine. I didn't mind, because I knew that number one, we hadn't set a precedent, and number two, we'd done what was morally correct. So I feel really good about it now. I don't know how the other school feels, and I wouldn't for a second mention who the other school is. But those are the sorts of decisions that we have to make. Okay, anything on that sort of area?
Now,
Yeah, go on.
if you have a good Paris body, like a parent association, we've got the Paris
Right,
body.
we'll talk about that.
That's
yeah.
a great, great area for looking into the bigger kind of issue that the school is facing. To get the issues come through the Paris. And if you've got a strong supportive Paris group, which we have in our school, it really solves 50% or 70% of the problems. The parents deal with it, We've got a really strong Paris chairperson, deals with a lot of, she's our spokesperson for a lot of things. So it has really helped out to see that the parents are managing the parents by themselves. Look here, if you ask for this, it's going to have a repercussion somewhere else. Those kind of stuff. So I think to look into building up a strong Paris body is important for solving these kinds of issues as well.
I would agree. And that takes us into another area of discussion, which is now, I'm currently leading James International School. Before I was there, I was at Jumeirah Primary School, James Jumeirah Primary School. And we had a situation there where we had the Parents Association. I guess you all have Parents Associations, and they do things like International Day and all of those kind of things, yeah? Which I'm going to call parent involvement, okay? And then we had another body, and we called it something like the Parent Advisory Council, okay? Now for me, do people have bodies like that? And those bodies have powers? Do they?
Yes.
Or not?
We
They
have
do.
that.
Okay, so for me it's very important to be clear in your own mind on the difference between those two types of bodies. Then when you have the second type of body, the body that has some power, and I say some power because I work for a company, so they ultimately won't have the power to make decisions, but I do listen. To have a body like that, for me, is hugely important, because what it does, and what the lady over here has said, and thank you for your contribution, is that it gives channels for those ideas to be funneled through to you as the principal of the school. Okay? Well, we've got to, have you spoken, you might say, for example, have you spoken to your class representative about this issue? They can bring it up. We'll have an agenda item about that at our next meeting. Okay? And for me, and you might disagree with me, it's not always the numbers that count. Let me give you an example. I had a parent who came to see me, and she was not a local parent, but she was an Arab parent, a Muslim parent. And she said to me that the children, and this is a judgment call, isn't it, at what age the children should change separately for PE, for physical education. And they used to get changed together in year 3 in my school. It was only one parent. She came up to me and said, I think they should be changed separately. And I thought about it, and I thought, it's only one person, but I don't care. Is what she's saying, does it have some point in this part of the world particularly? Yes, it does. I went to the head of year 3, 7 classes in year 3. I said, would it be a problem if we did that? He said, no. So I said, fine, we'll do it. We'll do it. That wasn't me being reactive, but it was me seeing the quality of the point that somebody made. So I guess another point for me is that usually we respond in numbers. So if there's 50 parents want a particular thing and one parent wants something else, we go with the 50. It's called democracy, I guess. But it's not always the case. Sometimes the one lone voice comes up with an idea and they are right, and we haven't thought of it ourselves. So now I want to chat to you a little bit, as I say, about the powers that the parents have in your schools. Do the parents in your schools have powers of governance? Do these boards that you have, do they have powers to make decisions which you then have to follow?
We've got an advisory council, and there are 3 parents who are very active participants, and they do have a power to influence decisions.
To influence, but are they allowed to make the final decision?
Not really. It's the collaborative decision of the advisory council, but yes, they can move the decision to a certain extent if it is a decision that is worth making, you know. So they have the power to advise as well as influence decisions to some extent. We do.
Okay, so power to advise. Anything any stronger than that?
My board are all parents.
Your board are all parents. Do they have the power? So just to explain, I work for a GEM school, so that's obviously a private company. It's going to be slightly different from Rob. Rob works for GES, which is a not-for-profit organisation. So the way that we interact with parents and the powers that parents have will be slightly different because of the nature of the organisation we work for. Rob, do you want to talk a little bit about yours?
It's really quite nice, actually. It's a self-electing body of parents who, some of them serve as much as 20 years. So their children may have left the school, but they're staying with GES. It makes 2 major strategic differences. One is one of consistency. If you've got a board changing every 3 years, then how do you keep that strategic overview? How do you hold your core values together as a school? The other side is, and one of the major reasons, I was just reflecting with Chris and saying, maybe I've stayed in just a bit too long. 16 years is a long time. Actually, what's kept me there is the fact that every single decision over a 16-year period has been made in favour of the students. And that's like heaven to an educator. It's just the best way to learn. But I'm very fortunate because I arrived in Dubai not knowing there was a difference between business schools and not-for-profit schools. So I find myself in a very unique situation where I'm an education advisor to the board and they make decisions based on family needs. One, the family of Jess, but also the unique families that we serve around the school. I feel very fortunate in that, Chris. But even at the moment, the inspection model criticises that because where are your elected parents is the call. So we've got 100% parental representation on there, but they want somebody elected every year onto the board, which is maybe not a bad idea, but I wouldn't see it becoming the majority. Because the true gift that I've worked with has always been that consistency. Sir Maurice Flanagan, who died last week, had been on the board of Jess for 24 years. And did he give fantastic guidance and support and vision over that period? Of course he did. As done several other members who've stayed with us for a long time. So parents involved in the governing body, yes, but as long-term membership, not just a drop in a couple of years and move on, pays really dividends.
Absolutely. Anybody else like to chip in and say what they have on their boards in terms of the type of representation or indeed the powers that those people have?
It's more of advisory.
More advisory, yeah.
That's
Is that the same for most people? Do we all have, is anybody who doesn't have any board at all or? Dysfunctional. Okay.
We would all say that now, dark boards.
They have interest in everything so we keep them informed about what's going on.
Well, you say dysfunctional, and please, I am not laughing about this situation because
No,
I'm going to give you an example. My own mother, bless her, who's still with us, is suffering from dementia. So I don't want anybody to think I find that funny. I don't find it funny. But I've actually been back in England, head teacher of a school where the chair of the governing body was starting to suffer from dementia. And it was very sad because what would happen is we would have an agenda item and then she would go back and have the agenda item again. I mean, we sorted it out in the end, but I guess the point that I'm making is where you get somebody in a position of power like that, if you haven't got a system to deal with that, it can become very difficult. And I know with this particular person, it did become quite difficult for us. Okay, talked about open door policy, we talked about powers that parents have. We're supposed to talk about parental communication. And I don't know about you, but I think about this a lot. How am I going to communicate with somebody, whether it's a parent or a member of staff or whoever it is? How am I going to communicate and when am I going to communicate? So what's the worst and most impersonal way of communicating with the parents? Well, clearly it's something on email, some kind of newsletter, and it's very impersonal. It's a bit like praise. I often talk about this. I'll say at the end of this session, I might say, Rob might say, we might say, you've been a wonderful audience, a wonderful group, thank you very much. Goodbye, and that's nice, and that's a very positive thing, and we like that. But if I select you out as an individual, maybe not in public, maybe in private, it depends, and I go up to you or Rob goes up to you and says, I just want to say that your contribution today was just fantastic. I just wanted to tell you that it made a big difference to me. It really helped me with the presentation, so thank you very much for being here. That is so powerful. That is so powerful. And so as human beings, we respond to general praise and we respond to general communication, but it's much more powerful if it's personal. And of course it's much more powerful if the person on the receiving end of that realizes we know something about them and their family. I mean, how often, it must have happened to all of you, somebody will come up to me and say, oh yes, well let me talk about, and you know, JPS was a school of 1,500 children. Okay, so big school, not by Dubai standards, but by my standards, okay? So you must know Jennifer in 3R, and you're thinking, Jennifer in 3R, not quite sure. But yeah, you will listen to what the person says, and if you don't know Jennifer, afterwards you go and find out who Jennifer is, because that's important, and that's important to that parent. But to go back to the issue of how you communicate. So, electronically, well, we don't do writing anymore, do we? Electronically, that's the worst. Impersonal, that's the worst. Then there's a kind of hierarchy. So we've got, for me, telephone call, okay? And then the best, and we've got other things like Skype stuck in there, and that continue as well. And of course, always the best is a face-to-face chat. And you have to know your parent. Now, for me, certain parents, I'll say, yeah, just pop in, or they'll knock on my door, say, pop in, I don't know them, pop in, yeah, we'll have a chat. That's the way I do things, very, very informal style. With certain parents, one in possibly, as Rob was saying, 100 or 1 in 500, I might say, you have to make an appointment. And I'll say, yeah. So I'm still going for the face-to-face interview, but you have to make an appointment. And for certain parents, and tell me if you think I've got this wrong and you're completely different, yes, you have to make an appointment, and I make sure I've got somebody with me. Okay, do we all do that? Because I know when this person comes in, I don't want them to walk out of the room having, through no ill will possibly, misinterpreted what I said.
Yeah.
Because how often does that happen? You sit at, there's a table here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people I could join, make 6, okay? We could have a conversation. At the end of that conversation, 10 minutes, you've got 6 different opinions as to what went on. Not because there's any malice or ill will or any emotion, just because we're human beings and we perceive things slightly differently. How much more is that the case when you've got somebody coming into your office who's emotional and wound up about something? And Rob said quite rightly, who are the most important people in our own lives? For any of you who are here who are parents, you will say your children. Of course they are. I've got 3 children. I'm very lucky. I feel absolutely blessed. And that's the best thing that's ever happened to me, is becoming a dad. So these people come into your office, as Rob says, quite rightly and understandably, they're very vexed about something, they're quite emotional, but they can be in a position where they get the wrong end of the stick. They take what we consider it to be the wrong message away. So for that reason, if for no other reason, yes, I'll see them face to face, but I'll have somebody with me. Very occasionally, I might have somebody with me because the parent who's coming to see me is a big Russian man who's got great big fists, and I might have somebody like Rob with me, and just I'll sit behind him and talk around his shoulder. I might do a bit of that. But usually, sorry.
Can I just make a comment?
Usually it's about interpretation. Go on, Rob.
How do you deal with a parental complaint, especially a written complaint? That's the classic force. And I used to work for a head who, if the parent made a complaint, he would never put thank you in his response. He would at the beginning or the end, which I thought was amazing. Because he took it very personal. Every complaint in the school was a personal complaint. And when I got into headship, I decided to really turn that around and flip it. And I was asking this question about parents' care. Why do they make a complaint? Is it because they're bothered? It's the parents who don't make complaints, the ones who maybe should worry about it. So whenever anyone writes in a complaint, first rule is, I always take my time. There's never an immediate response. And certainly email is the worst trap in the world. When somebody writes in the complaint, you go, oh, right, I'm at you for this. And it's totally the wrong strategy, because what happens there, the argument escalates. So the first thing I say is, take your time, and then acknowledge the fact that somebody has taken the time to write to you and let you know that they believe there is something wrong with the school. Whether they're right or wrong makes no difference. They've written in because they care. And always hold that thought. Even with the meanest of complaints, it might seem horrible to you at that moment, but they've taken the time to write. And it comes back to this word respect. Offer that little bit of respect, and especially when you get face to face with the parents. If they hear bad news, what happens? They stop listening. And that's a natural emotional response. The brain triggers in things that take them elsewhere. If you give somebody bad news during a conversation, they switch off. Or they hear bits and pieces. But if you start off with that positive, thank you very much for writing. thank you very much for coming in. We're going to have a discussion about this. Whatever happens afterwards, what's the thing they're going to remember? You're warm, you're welcoming, you're listening. And if they walk away with only that impression, then absolutely fine. They may not have won the game. And I remember a conversation like this years ago. It was about a Christmas concert and the colour green. Right? Really, really important. One parent disagreed with our version of the colour green. And he wrote in a real letter about when green became khaki and when it became brown and what colour it is. And it just went on, and I thought, well, so I brought him in and said, thank you very much. He'd really educated me about the colour green and what it meant. And we had a long conversation, a listening conversation I must add, because at the start of it, my ears were way back here. And eventually we turned it around to, okay, you make a choice.
Are you sure he's not a pilot now?
He was a pilot. But as far as he was concerned, he was right, and he wrote in as Captain such and such. It was all there.
Oh yeah.
And eventually I said, look, have you colour green? I don't mind. But when the kids are up on stage, your colour green will stand out for us. Do you really want that for your daughter? And we agreed to disagree, and he eventually did the right thing. But the starting point was, thank you for writing it. Thank you for this. I totally disagreed with him, because he was signalling out his child was going to be different. And the girl was actually emotionally challenged. She did not need to be different. But I went through 20 minutes of listening to colour green, or what was green, what was not green, what was khaki, what was good camouflage. All of this discussion eventually got back to, please don't do this to her. Just buy into it for her sake, not for mine, not for yours, but do this for your daughter. And you know what? The family context got there. And that guy, ever since, no complaints, big mates. He likes it because I'm listening, and he trusts me because I listen. And if you have something to say, it's a word on the gate. 2 minutes, gone, finished, and he's all right. So we'll part big buddies, but that's the power of these things. I'm not huge he is, so I'm blessed with this, and it is really, really a powerful thing to do. When you do get pinned on an issue, Chris was absolutely right. When the right ideas come along, you do listen. I often use the strategy of name 6. So if somebody says, I know this is happening in the school and everyone disagrees, give me 6 instances. And the same with staff when they come and say, oh, Des are paying 3 times as much as Jess and the housing levels is high, as with other schools in Dubai. Name 6. And it just deflates an argument. I'll give you more examples with parents. Just the listening bit, and use your personalities. You know, you're in the positions you are. Because you're great people, you're very powerful people, you're very important people. They're often worried about meeting us, and to accept them onto a level playing field. You know, sit to the side, don't sit confrontation. Little bits, bring them into their conversation. Because ultimately they've instigated the conversation. We are more likely to finish it because we know what the outcome needs to be. It may take us 3 minutes to get there, it may take us 20 minutes to get there, but we know the pathway. And it's going to always end up as being a joint decision. Because at the end of the day, who's important? It's not me, it's not the parent, it's the child. Always. If you come back to the child with parents, you will win every time.
No, I agree 100%. You know, listening to Rob there, quite wicked thought. My mother would tell you I was very mischievous as a boy. I don't think I've changed much as an adult. And you will get these letters, you know them very well. Captain W.E. Johns, BSc, Cantab, MA, Oxford, blah, 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 and it goes on for several lines. And I thought...
You know the guy?
I know him. And I thought, one day, before I shuffle off this mortal coil, before I move out of my profession, I must go somewhere. If anybody knows anywhere, tell me. I want to buy a PhD, a doctorate, for about 20 dirhams. I don't know if there's any universities anywhere that do them. So I can put, when I reply, I can put, yes, yours sincerely, Dr. Christopher McDermott, PhD, whatever it is, university. I don't know. Okay. But you know what Rob's been talking about, what we've been talking about, and I guess now I'm starting to think I'm going to draw our bit to a close, and then what I'm going to do, or what Rob and I are going to do, is we're going to take issues from you and ask you if there's anything to do with parents you want us to discuss, and we'll do that. But before we do that, I'm just going to summarise for myself this whole issue of parental complaint and possible confrontation. And it's a golden rule that most situations are sorted out best informally, immediately, face to face, and without them becoming big issues. Okay? And I'll give you one example. This is not an issue from Dubai. This is at my school in London. So we had two members of staff. They didn't like each other. Okay? And we had a situation. Now the situation took about 15 seconds. One member of staff says to the other, "Don't talk to the children while I'm lining them up in silence." The other member of staff says to that person, "Don't you speak like that to me in front of the children." That's the end of it. Okay? That's the end of it. The whole thing, finished. Do you know how many academic years that went into? 3. 3 academic years. Do you know why? Because I'm getting my union involved in this, so the union came in. Teachers' union. The other person actually wasn't a teacher, but they were in another union. Right, I'm getting my union involved. And all the union, one of the union people, all that he wanted to do was have a fight. He wasn't interested in solving the problem. He wasn't solution focused, which is what Rob's been talking about, and you've been talking about, and I've been trying to talk about. They weren't interested in being solution focused. They wanted to have a fight because they wanted to show that this union defeats every head teacher they've ever had anything to do with. We've got a proud record and we've beaten them all. Well, sorry guys, you didn't beat me. In the end, the governing body upheld the decision, and I was very pleased. But that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is that it became a ridiculous thing. That little interchange that I've just talked about went to me, went to the governing body, went to the council, went to everybody. You know, because people were stubborn. And I was listening this morning to a very sad individual. I listened to Dubai 92, because I'm way too old to listen to Dubai 92, but I listened to Dubai 92. Does anybody else listen to that? With Catboy? Oh, well done. This was, I can't remember, about 6 o'clock in the morning. How sad am I? And Catboy's on there. And they were talking about the main reason for divorce. Okay, people to get divorced, if they're going to get divorced, apparently 7 years is a key time. I don't know if they time it or how it happens. Anyway, it's 7 years. And do you know what they said the main reason for divorce was? Stubbornness. Right? How many times have I told you about that? Right, I'm not speaking about it because I'm right and you're wrong, and you think you're right and I'm wrong, and that's it, we get divorced. And that's what was happening in this situation with the two unions. And the more formal things become, the more difficult it becomes. Because to go back to Rob's example of the emails, somebody's reading from an email. It says here in your email, and they read you some of the words, and interpret it in a way that you didn't mean it to be interpreted at all. Because when we're going through face-to-face conversations, we've got body language to help us. You know the statistics, don't you? Roughly, in rough terms. This is not a precise science. 70% of the message we give is through our body language, about 20% the way we say things, and only 10% is actually the content of what we say. So we're very clever, we use emails. Very clever not, because of course that reduces us down to about 10% accuracy. And people will interpret it, you thought, no, I didn't mean it like this. So you're depriving yourself of that interactivity. You're depriving yourself of the body language, the empathy, the listening, the very angry parent who comes who wants to just vent, and let them vent. Sometimes I sit there and I just listen. I have another rule, by the way, because do you ever get people who come along and they interrupt you all the time? It's usually Chris McDermott who does this. But have you had those parents? So I have a rule for them as well. I say, right, okay, coming into my office, this is the rule. For the first 15 minutes you will speak and I'm not allowed to interrupt you. And I don't say anything. I just take notes and do whatever I do. And I tell them this before I start, but the second half of the rule is, and you know what that's going to be, I'm going to have 15 minutes where you're not allowed to interrupt me.
Doesn't work.
Yeah. Because I say to them, will you agree to this? Because if you don't agree to it, and I tell them before the meeting, if you don't agree to it, then I won't have the meeting. Now, I don't do that very often. I probably do that one meeting in every 100. So it's very rare. It's not my normal style. But sometimes I have to do that with those people because I have to find space for me to talk. So it's just a way of constructing it. But I get agreement prior to the meeting. It just makes my life a little bit easier.
I want to just add on that. It's a very good strategy because then you're not being defensive and you're just listening. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think also what happens is, sometimes you'll have a parent who's booked an appointment and has a concern coming to see you. And as he or she is entering your office, you see two more people. And we're wondering, you've booked an appointment with Mrs. So-and-so child in year 4A or whatever. And excuse me, good morning, nice to see you. How can I help you? No, she was coming in, so we thought we'd come in. And,
yes.
And,
tag along.
So I have this child who's in 4A, all the information filled out, spoken to the teacher, ready to meet the parent, address the concern. And I would ask them to wait, and I'll speak to this parent and say, I put an appointment 2 days ago. I'm sure they really want this time to be able to discuss your child's progress. Yes. So to be honest, to that. And then speak to them and say, I'll see you. And you don't have an appointment, I'll meet you. But you need to wait, and I'll see you one by one.
So that's what I call the deputation issue, where you go to deputation a group of parents, a gang, if you like.
Sometimes not to take that pressure and meet them, but meet them individually because that's how it was booked. Until and unless they've actually come together to.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that 100%.
Yes, that's right.
One child. I once, just this year, actually had a situation where 3 family members turned up from the extended family, which culturally a few years ago I wasn't used to. And I met with all of the family because the matriarchal leader of the family was there, and the father, and another auntie. And that was a very positive conversation, but focused on the one child. Bystanders coming in.
Another thing also that sometimes helps particularly is keeping the cultural context of the parents in mind and the issue that they're coming in with is there were times when I pull my chair, so not sit across the table, sit with them.
That's what Rob was saying, sit next to them.
It just automatically, and it comes down by 50% immediately. They walked in, they're very, very upset about something, and you put them, get them to sit down and sit across them and say, I've heard you out, this is what we've done, we've spoken to you.
Listen to the craft of this voice.
We're
down here. We're no longer up there.
Not at all.
And this is not confrontational.
Not at all. And immediately you will see that the parent eases up, relaxes, shares whatever other information that needs to be shared, and we sort of move on and develop a plan. Okay, I understand. Okay, that we missed something out here. Speak to the teacher about it. What can we do?
Yeah, sorry.
I just wanted to say, after a tough day meeting with parents and meeting with the complaints that you do each and every day, part of my strategy is to pull out an email or a letter that the parents would have actually written to thank us for what you've done. So very often this positive note at the end of the day when you just want something to pull you out of the whole day that came, just to remind you that yes, there are a lot of parents out there who really appreciate what you've done and what you're doing. So that as well keeps the balance of it.
Here's an interactive thing. How many people here have a folder in the bottom drawer of positive letters from parents?
Yeah, that's all.
Who gets it out and reads it once a fortnight?
Yeah. How do you deal with one parent writing a complaint and copying 6 other parents into the mail?
Yeah.
How do you cope with that? Well, I'll start off if you want, and Rob, and people will chip in. Are we due to finish? What time are we due to finish? Was it 2? It does.
Yes.
Sorry, are we due to finish now? Okay, good. Yeah, can I just do the one answer and then we'll go? Because
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Very, very quickly. I would judge that on the basis of the issue. Okay? So sometimes I will copy everybody in. Do you know what? To be honest, if I send it to one parent, they're going to copy everybody else in anyway, so it doesn't make any difference. So when I'm writing, I'm aware of the fact that anything that I put out there on media can go to everybody in the world, and certainly can go to those half dozen parents. I'm aware of that when I'm writing, and I just make that judgment based on the particular complaints. But I don't have a problem copying people in. I don't, I've just been quite happy to do that. Okay, I think we've come to an end. I hear a bell or something going on. So can I say thank you to all of you and thank you to Rob, and I think we've